All right, so we're going to continue with the discussion. We kind of went overboard on the video, and so we got cut out. So we're live again. Hopefully, we'll get everybody back on. Let's send the link out. Put that in the comments. Boom. So if someone wants to join us.
There we go. All right, let's see if we got. That's on the old stream. Let me go back to the other one and let me leave some instruction. Nope, that's the new one.
Let me drop the new link Let me drop the new link real quick for the people who want to join.
Drop the new link if you can.
Oh shucks. Let's see. Hang on a second. Yeah, the other stream looks like that's already gone. So, all right. So let's not try to get killed again.
Yeah, the other. Okay.
I have to laugh while you said that shit.
Please. I'm putting that link. I'm putting the new link out.
All right.
Let's not try to get killed.
Yeah, no kidding. And I was doing so good without swearing.
I know. No, you can swear all you want to.
Well, not exactly. I mean, there's you get deranked.
You had one guy. He did a whole clip on me, calling somebody a retarded hacker. I guess that could have got us banned. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, you want to keep the language, user friendly. Because you gotta keep in mind, the powers that be at YouTube, they want to have something that's safe. That if you're at home, you're watching something, and your kid walks in, and there's not a bunch of F-bombs and that kind of stuff.
Right.
I mean, there are streams that do that, but those are the ones that are more established and have, they don't rely on YouTube's like ranking system, to where word gets out. Okay, since this is like a brand new channel. It's you're kind of clawing with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of others, other content creators to get them into the system. So when you have streams that just effectively what happened just now with the previous stream was that we were utilizing too much of somebody else's content to discuss it. Right.
Exactly.
So we can take it in small chunks, like, okay, here's a 30-second clip. Here's a 1-minute clip. Talk about it for 3 or 4 minutes, and then kind of move on.
Yeah, we usually do that and never have a problem, of course. But we didn't go.
Yeah, no, and that's how.
I got caught up looking for this definition because Forrest had threw in a question during the video, and he was saying that this fascism definition was too broad, So I was trying to get all the usages and figure out which one was he trying to go for, whatever. And
right.
All of them pretty much are the same. It's like
I'm tagging everybody. So everybody's tagged. Yep, we got shut down.
Because we got a lot of people going too, man.
I tagged you too, Mike. So if you want to tag anybody into the link on your wall, you can, because I tagged you into the.
No, you're good.
And you got anybody, Scott, that needs the new link?
Did.
Just tag their names on your wall. I just tagged you in the link.
All right. I'm waiting to see if anybody else joins in.
I'm talking to you, Scott.
Yeah, I'm talking to you. Yeah, I'm putting them out there, man.
Come back.
It looked like you was just sitting there, like I couldn't tell that you were doing anything.
Yep, I was sitting there like reading through all these definitions and trying to get it together. I was like, let me pause this. I got a minute left. Let me just.
Okay, so the guy said that was too general of a.
Yeah, it was too general of a broad of a definition for fascism. So I guess he's a fascist, and he's saying that we're misrepresenting fascism.
No, because
But the host, if he isn't, the bottom line though is that every definition, at least from the Merriam-Webster, the common usages are a political philosophy, movement, or regime that exalts nation and often race above the individual, and that stands for a centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader, severe economic, social regimentation, and forcibly suppression of any opposition. And then the second most common usage is a tendency towards or actual exercise of strong autocratic or dictatorial control. Those are the two most common definitions of it. At least,
well, yeah, and the first 20th century purveyor of fascism would have been Mussolini, right? Where he was a very impassioned and bold and like leader. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember if he was elected. I think he was. And he ruled with an iron fist. And if you deviated, you would be severely punished. Why nationalism and fascism get conflated is because they can oftentimes join in, they can kind of conjoin with one another, but they are, to the gentleman on TED Talk, his point was they can be separate and distinct. You can have nationalistic societies like, Norway, Sweden, Japan, places like that, that are very nationalistic in their government. Okay. Easy example is you look at the demographic, you look at the homogeneity of those nations that he gave examples to, right? What's the one thing they all pretty much share in common? They're all Japanese, they're all Swedish, they're all Norwegian, right? Mm-hmm. And they share similar types of genetic makeup, but they look similar, they have similar skin tone, similar hair color, right? So, right. You look at Norway, Sweden, for example, and Japan and China, very homogenous nation. Okay, there's not a vast array of changing in demographic, in skin color and culture and stuff. That there's the Japanese culture. This is what separates the United States from these other nations, and progressively more like the United Kingdom and stuff like that. So where we're a much more diverse nation. Okay, where we have people that come from all.
Doesn't nationalism? Right. I just have a question on that. Doesn't nationalism also mean, though, that you're simply just proud of your country?
That I'm getting to that.
Okay.
And so you can have a homogenous nation be nationalist and say, okay, we're all proud to be Japanese, we're all proud to be Norwegian, Swedish, Mexican, whatever, right? But you can also have a nation set up like the U.S. with all the diversity that you want, that the U.S. has, because we have people from everywhere, right? But all kind of fall into that same nationalistic umbrella of proud to be part of your nation. Okay. And that's what makes the United States very unique, in that we are among the first, correct me if I'm wrong, first nations to have people come from many different nations experiencing the pitfalls of socialism, pitfalls of fascism, the pitfalls of, of an oppressive government, whether it be a monarch, whether it be, dictators and so on. They can come here and you can become American. I don't know of another country where you can emigrate to and within a number of years become legally recognized as an American, right? I can't go to Germany, learn German, and in 5 years I can be a German citizen maybe on paper, but the locals aren't going to consider me German because I don't have the right accent, I don't have the right look, or if I go to Norway, Sweden, whatever. You can come to America, learn the predominant language, okay, not the official, because there's no official language in that's right, but the predominant language being in English, and adopt American principles, okay? And if you converse with other Americans throughout the country, more often than not, you're going to be welcomed as an American. You may have an accent, great, but you've taken, as an immigrant, you've come and made the steps of wherever I was living in the past, for whatever reason, wasn't working. It was okay, it was bad, it was terrible. I came to the U.S. and I tried it their way. I learned the language. I integrated into that fabric, that beautiful fabric of society, and now I'm successful. Just more so than I was previously, right? I had to work my butt off, all those things, okay? And that's part of the American experiment, because if you look at nations by and large, specifically Japan, specifically Norway, Sweden, Germany, there's the level of diversity is minimal. Okay,
I can attest to that because I was born in Germany and I still wasn't looked at as a German. simply because I don't
Right.
look like a German. That's
Exactly.
simple.
And honestly, I would not be surprised if you spoke fluent German. You grew up there, you know.
Exactly, and I do, and they still would come up to me and say, "Do you speak German?" Even they hear me speak German, but they're just so thrown off by how I look that I can't be German. That's the truth.
Well, growing up in South Florida, okay, and I kind of have a unique outlook. My mother was born and raised in Cuba. My father was born and raised in Canada. Okay. So my father came from a socialist country. My mother came from a communist country. So I grew up in a real conservative household. And I consider myself a lot more moderate. I have some right-leaning tendencies. I have some left-leaning tendencies. So, to coin a phrase from a popular, media content creator, is kind of a milquetoast fence sitting. And so I got to come up with my own. But that seems to be a fitting description of where I stand. But I tend to lean more right on several things. Do I think there should be like a social safety net for people that need it? Yes. Do I think it should be abused? No. And growing up in a very diverse, growing up in a very diverse environment, I had, even going, like, my first 5 years of school were in private school, and I went to private school as in a Southern Baptist private school, growing up as an LDS kid, Mormon kid, in a group of people that absolutely hated Mormons. Absolutely, like,
they'll probably tell you what Mormonism
fiery
is all
passion. Pretty much. And I'm in kindergarten, and I've got a 6'3", 140-pound pastor that had the worst arthritis you've ever seen in your life, like wanting to beat the ever-loving crap out of me. And I had no idea. I was 7 years old, for crying out loud. You know what I mean? And so, but I could go on and that, and, for whatever. So getting back to Harari, talking about kind of nationalism, and I wanted to kind of touch on how nationalism in the last couple of years has been viewed as, oh, well, you're a bad person if you love your country, right? How can you love the United States? Yeah, how can you love the United States because it was, founded in slavery and founded in this and founded by evil white people and blah 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 blah. And none of that is true. Did that element exist? Absolutely, right? But was it founded on that? That's ridiculous. Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of people will say to an immigrant, "Go back to where you came from," like Forrest mentioned, and I've heard people say that, but that, for me, is the minority. You don't usually hear that. And that's why it's such a shocking statement. It's shocking for the very fact that it doesn't happen that much. Now, it used to happen a lot more than it does now, but I don't think that that's the norm at all.
Well, growing up here, I never heard the phrase "go back to your country," right? And I grew up with Mexicans. I grew up with black kids. I grew up with Cubans, Puerto Ricans, Venezuelans. I grew up with everybody. And the funny thing about, and this is kind of what I was alluding to earlier, is that, my peers growing up, they'd be like, "Hey, where are you from?" "Oh, I'm from here." "No, dummy, where are your parents from?" And they're like, "Oh, well, my mom's from Cuba." "Oh, you're Cuban. Go hang out with the Cubans." Well, the problem was I had red hair. I didn't look like a Cuban kid. I was a, freckle-faced, redheaded kid that, stuck out like a sore thumb, right? So I couldn't hang out with the Cubans because I wasn't Cuban enough. So then I hung out with, the white kids, and I was like, "Hey, oh, you're Cuban? Okay, you're not white enough to be white." I go hang out with black kids.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah. I hung out. I didn't care who I hung out with. I just wanted to, if I was going to go, play with the kids, as long as they didn't want to beat me up, I didn't care what color they were. It didn't matter to me.
That's a lot how it is for mixed people like myself, because you're not black enough when it comes to black people, and you ain't white enough when it comes to white people. And at one point I was like, you know what? I'm just me, period. I don't give a damn. Exactly. I don't care.
Like the first,
if you white, black, whatever. Yeah.
Second grade, Southern Baptist private school. The first black kid I ever hung out with and talked, his name, honest to God, was Tyrone. Okay.
Yeah, man.
Stereotypical, and he was cool. He was cool as hell, man. And I just was like, it didn't dawn on me until years later that, oh, he's a different color than me. That was not at forefront. He was just a guy that was nice to me. I was like, all right, cool, you know. And this whole concept of race, I learned about, you know, later in life.
I want to add to that because Scott, didn't we talk about that before? Like, I don't know if I said this example again, but it's a good example to reiterate your point and how true that is, because my daughter's dad, he's Native American and he looks kind of like you as far as skin color and everything goes. And, you know, one day we were barbecuing and me and him had these debates, and I was trying to tell him, you know, that whole racial thing is taught to children, and he didn't really agree. So I just caught him off guard one day, and I told my kids to hold out their hands, and everybody hold out their hands. And so we all held out our hands, and nobody really knew what I was doing. And then I was like, okay, I asked the kids, what's the difference between everybody's hands? And the first thing one of my kids said was, well, his hand's hairy and bigger. And that's all they saw. You know, they didn't see see the color, you know. And so that's when I told him, look, that was a little experiment. Now, do you believe me now? And he was just like, man, you got a point, you know. So yeah.
So I grew up, you know, living in the United States, and like when I was pre-teens, you know, people ask me the same question. Oh, where are you from? Well, I'm half Cuban, I'm half Scottish, you know, Canadian, but I'm all American. And people thought that was, you know, pretty clever, you know what I mean? And so that's been my mantra is like, you know, hey, if you came here from another place and, you know, you braved whatever troubles you had to get in to, you know, to get here, and you did it the right way, and, you know, you went through the arduous, you know, bureaucratic process, which arguably needs to be streamlined significantly, then hey, you know, as long as you're here and you and I are kind of like fighting on the same team for the same, you know, rights that I want you to have, then you want me to have, right? Yeah, I want you to be able to speak your opinion about X, Y, and Z. I want, you know, and I want to hear about yours. And I, you know, want to, you know, I'd like you to hear about mine if that's okay, you know, and share that commonality of the diversity of thought. Is to me is far more important than the diversity of, you know, skin tone, because we're all human beings. We can all be American, right? And when you close your eyes and you hear people talk, you're hearing words and you're hearing thoughts and you're hearing emotions, right? Everything else that you see when your eyes are open, it's just a suit. You know,
we're kind of social engineered in a way to feel a certain kind of way about the concept of race and what it means. Like we are kind of taught to feel like, you know, what is black? Black means this, and if you're not within that category, then you're not really black, or you're a sellout, or you're not being
right.
You're betraying your race. Same with white.
That's what all these ideologies.
But who sets that standard? Who sets the standard of if you do X, Y, and Z, then you are or are not X or Y?
That's the thing. That's the whole thing. That's the whole thing. That's why we're bringing this topic up, because it's coming from somewhere. It ain't the people. The shit, excuse my language, just pops up overnight, and all of a sudden we all supposed to think like this. And I'm like, okay, who's pulling the strings here? Because it ain't us. You know, we know that it ain't us.
And these days it happens so fast. Like the culture is changing so fast, and how we're supposed to feel about words and pronouns and how we're supposed to feel about this and that has been taught to us through social media outlets, through media, you know, TV, all kinds of ways, movies, you name it. And, you know, it's just other ways that, and, you know, some of this stuff isn't really government driven. Maybe in our country, the government reacts, you know, they put their finger up and try to feel where the current's going. So, you know, I feel like if we want to make cultural change, we should do it from the ground up. That's why we have this show and we talk about these things and we challenge these ideas from the cultural level. You know, that's the whole point. But again, with fascism, I did want to get this out just because we've got most of our audience back here now. The two common usages for fascism, at least according to Merriam-Webster, is number one, fascism is a political philosophy. It's a movement or regime such as that of the fascists. that exalts nation and often race above the individual, and that stands for a centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader, severe economic and social regimentation, and forcible suppression of opposition in the individual. And then
Okay.
That's what he was saying.
So pause-
That's what
so
Harari.
pause-
That's what Harari. Sorry, that's what Harari
No, no,
was saying.
You're good. So listen to, I mean, as far as focus on the real important word there is above the individual.
Mhm.
Okay.
Right.
What is, if you were to single out one specific thing that makes the United States very unique in its existence, looking at it through the Constitution, looking at it through the Bill of Rights, looking at it through the thing, what is at central point in being American?
Of course, it's the right to the individual.
Precisely. The right to the individual, the right to be your own person. Okay. And so
Exactly.
when you look at the core in how I comprehend the formation of the country, okay, that had to evolve, and people might interject about, slavery and that kind of stuff. We can touch on that a little bit later. But at the core of our existence, the fact that we are here, the fact that we're born, the fact that we have life, that we breathe in air through our lungs, okay, that right is a natural right to merely exist, okay? And so the centerpiece of how our government was formed revolves around the individual. Fascism is the complete opposite of that, okay? Fascism is, like Harari was saying, millions of strangers kind of all, join together, and it makes fascism and nationalism can be conjoined under the flag of nationalism, because, we're all Italian, or we're all, German, whatever. Okay. And this is how we do things. And outsiders or people that aren't Italian or aren't German, or, whatever nationality you want, they're not one of you. You're better than them. You're superior to them. Okay. And so in the experiment of the United States, you have the centerpiece being the individual. Okay. And each individual has their rights. As soon as you go into somebody and deprive someone else of their rights, there's your line as far as, okay, you have all the rights until you try to take away somebody else's right.
Mm-hmm.
And then there comes in the concept of, of as far as like the evolution of laws and, penalties and, things like that, because typically when a crime occurs, you're infringing on someone else's right to exist in some fashion, damaging their property, damaging their person.
But see, that's what happens with social engineering. So they all of a sudden change the definition of what a crime is, for example, or what I'm saying, stuff like that. So now,
well, this is the end. Like where we're at right now, we're kind of towards the end of what the social engineering, because in order to accomplish the goal, okay, and the goal here is globalism, okay, that the Rockefellers, and the World Economic Forum, groups like that, they have to kind of burn the place down to build anew, okay, or right. So goes the theory
by causing chaos and division. Because Correct. After they cause the chaos and the division, now they have every right to come in under the guise of emergency executive order.
Single world government, and stuff, and that's that's kind of the thing that Americans should fight against, regardless of whether you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, Green Party, whatever.
Here's my theory: is that and the video is going to go into this, and I agree wholeheartedly. Is that one of the more effective ways to burn things down and start anew is to simply hack into people's emotion centers and start hacking into how people feel about certain words, certain things, and you can sort of herd
and constantly trigger them.
Yeah, and make it very socially, make you a social outcast for holding certain opinions. And that's the most effective way because they're actually hacking into the grassroots. And so we're fighting back by saying, hey, let's challenge it. Let's maximize individual liberty where we can and where it's reasonable as much as possible. And we have this discussion and we can have that challenge back and forth so that we can find that sweet spot instead of just rolling over to the information that we receive and are spoon fed every day. Let's be a little critical thinking. Let's challenge things. Let's not humiliate people for having a different idea, because I can be wrong too. And
can I say something? Can I say something real quick?
Sure, absolutely.
So what gets on my nerves about leftists is that they always call conservatives Nazis, and then they bring up stuff like that abortion stuff. And I'm like, the thing about abortion is most people generally agree that it's not really an ethical thing to do. But when it comes to fascism, it's usually always a small group of people that's trying to make everybody else do what they want them to do and have to use manipulation or social engineering to get people to do it. And then if they still don't want to do it, then you have to use some type of scare tactic. And then you use, they step it up a notch the more you don't go along with it.
And I mean, people are going to be... people are going to be easier to control
in government. There's no difference at all there,
No, right, I'm just saying, it's not conservatives that are doing this. It's actually leftists who are doing this right now because you got, for example, you got these lesbians who were just kicked out of a Pride event in the UK because the trans women are saying that if lesbians don't choose to date trans women who identify as lesbian, then they're bigoted, and they were literally removed from the premises. So it's like you're the one who's a fascist, man. Like, how can people not see that? You're the fascist when you're forcing others to go along with your ideology just because you see yourself as a
control people's language. That's how you control their thought and control their behavior, if you can control that language. But let's jump into the video.
And that's all part of social. That's all part of social engineering, controlling the language, changing definitions, all that kind of stuff. If you look it up, that's all part of social engineering. And if you compare it to what's going on today, where they even changed the definition of what a vaccine is, I mean, that's what's going on. And that's kind of all that I'm trying to bring out here,
Oh yeah, absolutely. You've got a wonderful point, man, because that's absolutely true. But let's jump into the video. I'm not going to let it play for another 7 minutes. I promise. I'm not going to kill us.
I'll do that again.
Yeah, we ain't gonna doing that, or you'll have my head. So here we go.
And dictatorships might come back, but they will come back in a new form, a form which is much more relevant to the new technological realities of the 21st century. In ancient times, land was the most important asset in the world.
All right, pause it right there. Pause it right there.
Was the struggle to control land.
Okay, so he brings up a very important historical note there as far as kind of how we got here. When you start looking at the historical elements of how, humanity evolved, right? We all started off in tribes, okay? You had, the European continent, well, you had Pangea, but, let's talk more the last 5,000 years, okay? You had the European continent, you had the African continent, okay? And you had essentially, tribes of, hunter-gatherers and stuff. And as those populations grew, the resources that supported those, those populations, once they started to dwindle, you would have essentially scouts go out and try to find more resources to bring them back. Well, those scouts would effectively run into other tribes, right? And so I would think at the very beginning it was like, oh, who's this person coming into our, into our territory, right? And sometimes, it worked out okay. Sometimes, skirmishes broke out, right? And so you'd have, let's say you'd have a group of, 5 or 10 scouts go out. They go out, hiking for the next, 10, 20 days. They go 25, 30, 40, 50 miles out. They run into another tribe. Okay. Well, the other tribe, they're not very friendly. And so they kill off 3 or 4 of them, and then they run, the other 6 run back and say, hey, these guys, they killed these guys. And then now they start coming at each other, right? They're competing for the resources, right? Well, the losers of that skirmish, what happened with the people that were, that survived? Well, they effectively became slaves, right? So that's kind of how, and I'm going back, several thousand years. That's kind of how the whole concept of slavery, in my opinion, began, where you'd have a group of people that wasn't as tactical, wasn't as strong, whatever.
Right. The strong simply exploited the weak
right.
people.
That's nature. But see, that's nature, baby. I mean, I'm sorry to say
it is nature. No, you're
and
absolutely right.
Like
But
Thomas Sowell said, life is tough, and that's just the reality of it, and that's nature.
Wow.
Well, and keep in mind,
before we go on,
who the hell just said, "Wow"? I don't recognize that voice.
We have Butch has joined us on the stream, so I wanted to give him a chance to introduce himself. What's going on,
Bill? Is that the voice I just heard that said, "Wow"?
Probably. Let's hear it.
I was just saying in regards to what you said about slavery.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, I'm just saying that's a pretty cavalier attitude that you're having towards it, and that things just happen.
Well, I'm not being cavalier about it. I'm just looking at it through a historical perspective, and how the concept came into existence. Okay, and so I'm not amplifying it, or I'm not turning it down. The mere fact that slavery has existed for thousands and thousands of years, and the point I was going to get to is that same reality evolved on both continents. It evolved in the European continent. It evolved into, before it was even called slavery, it evolved on the African continent, because human nature is, to this day, and Forrest Taylor pointed that out, it still is. We just have a very different ways of going about it, right? We just don't go and there's the competition for resources is going to be with us until the extinction of humanity, or life in general, because even animals on the plains, they're competing for resources, right? You look at a group of lions, but that reality of slavery, it evolved separately, but around the same, on both continents. So and then as those continents,
what is your outlook? How do you think slavery evolved, or why do you think slavery exists?
You asking me or Butch?
You're muted.
Oh yeah.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead. How do you think slavery started? What is your theory?
Well, I mean, you have countries, you have that went and conquered other countries, weaker countries. I mean, they basically take the people there and use them as labor.
Right.
I mean, Europe's done it. U.S. has done it, although they're trying to whitewash it now. I mean, but they've just basically, these countries taken over the weak, taking their resources, which are people and other things, and making their country better.
Right.
Well, but the reality is, in what you're saying is factually correct. However, that reality has existed long before there were ever nations.
Yeah, because tribal people captured each other and things like that. And all we're saying is that it's nature. In nature, you're going to see this, that the one that is stronger is going to try to exploit the one that's weaker. I mean, we're just recognizing the facts. You know what I mean? We're not.
Well,
trying
keep
to
in mind, it's more than just stronger. I mean, stronger is part of it, but you also have civilizations that may not have been stronger physically, but they were more cunning, right? You can have all the brute. If you have all the brute strength in the world, but you're dumb as a rock, you're gonna get
right. But that's why the word stronger can be applied in several ways. It doesn't necessarily mean physical strength. In whatever way you're stronger, whether it's more cunning or whatever, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And
so
we're
not. We're just not trying. We're not. Is the dude still here, Butch?
Yeah, he's still here.
Yeah, he's still here.
Yeah, I'm listening.
Oh, okay. We're
because
just trying. We're not trying to put emotion into it. You see what I'm saying?
right, but you look at it through the eyes of most people that have gone to school, you know, in the U.S. Over the last 60 or 70 years, right? The common perception that most Americans have, at least that I think, and I'm more than happy to be wrong, is that slavery began and was birthed, you know, from the United States, or to some degree, right? And so, you know, slavery existed for thousands and thousands of years, and so to unravel that, for lack of a better term, you know, tradition, which is horrifying in and of itself, but to unravel that fact couldn't be done overnight. So, for example, let's look at it through this concept. So, let's say, you know, the first pioneers that came over and say, "Hey, we're going to end slavery right now," right? The country would have never survived. Okay, so they had to take that thing and put it on the back burner for a while and get, you know, a consensus to start changing a civilization's norm. And it wasn't just, you know, white Europeans. It wasn't just, you know, slavery was the scourge of throughout history. That there's not a single area on this planet that has not been either affected.
It's even in the Bible.
It's, of course, but it even predates the Bible. It even predates the books of the Bible.
Yeah.
And so the
Bible
abhorrence of
was ever written, wasn't it?
well, yeah, but that was a reality. I'm not saying
What?
that.
No.
I'm not saying I'm not in any way, shape, or form. I'm not saying that it was right. I'm just saying that this is the reality of the situation, and to change a culture of, you know, the culture of slavery that had lasted for thousands and thousands of years, there had to be a means to actually provide people an alternative to needing a slave.
Uh-oh.
Oh, good.
Dang.
Oh, good. He said, "Oh, good." Man, you ain't nobody, Butch. Go ahead.
Now, why you said that?
Look, Sophie, okay, can I say something? I just think
Yeah, you can say something.
you know you're black, right?
Uh-oh.
I see. Don't go there, man. Here we go. I am Native American. I am Haitian and Spaniard, and I grew up in Germany. So call me a summer chick because I'm some of this and some of that.
Yeah, I'm partly Dutch. I'm gonna stick my damn finger in a hole on a dam or something. I'm black.
You red bone.
Are you?
Yes.
You look lighter
What?
than me.
I can drive over there where you at now.
What does black mean to you?
I ain't gonna lie. I thought you was a white guy from.
What
I thought
does
you was a white guy
mean?
from.
Skin tone? Like,
Hey,
where's
Butch.
the cutting?
No,
line?
it to me it's not skin tone. It is a
Butch, the way you sound, I thought that you was a white guy from Texas.
no. But you know, see, that's the thing though. Even though I sound like this, even though I talk like this, I still am a black man. I said the same fears, the same regrets, the same anger, the same angst. I still feel, you know,
But what does it mean to be
lately,
black?
man,
Explain that to me. What does it mean to be black to you?
to me,
Yes.
unimportant.
Oh Lord, I'm very
Yeah.
important. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's pretty much the way that in this country is how we're treated.
Why do you
And
say
don't get
that?
me wrong, I admit, you know, that a lot of black people are the problem. When you go and look at these videos, I saw one today where you got all these people in a neighborhood and they're fighting, and these people are watching it. I'm talking about dozens of people watching these two people fight, and they're cheering it on. It's embarrassing to me as a black man to see that.
Yep, I agree.
It is. But that don't change the fact that I do have a lot of anger in me. I really do.
But what in particular are you angry about? Because my whole thing is, do you have this? Are you living okay? I mean, did you have the same opportunities as everybody else, or didn't you?
No, we do
I'm
not
saying-
have the same opportunity.
Are you speaking for yourself or all of us? Because I, as a Black woman, actually had the same opportunities as everybody else. And I came over to the United States in 1998. And I was a foreigner. Yeah, true, because I grew up in Germany. But, you know, the roots of my family on my dad's side goes back to a French slave plantation, which I still carry that last name, which is Armand. And so I'm just saying, like, there are successful Black people, and then there are people. Then there are people who choose to continue to practice a culture that is really not our culture.
I agree with you on that, but there's also a people who dedicate themselves to try to have better lives, but they cannot because that finger is on them at a stopping point where they cannot get any further. And that is all.
Can you give me an example of that?
Oh yeah, my family, me. I've been working at my job for 30 years, and everyone has been promoted except me. And
so why do you stay there? I'm not trying to be smart or anything, but you say you worked there for 30 years and you still haven't gotten a promotion, but everyone else has. So let's just say your boss or your company is racist. In fact, why do you stay there?
I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't call my company racist.
But what do you call it if they leave you out in particular? Are you the only Black person there?
Well, except for Scott, yeah.
And so you're the only one who hasn't gotten that?
It's more than that. It's getting pulled and drug out of a car and thrown into a paddy wagon for no reason at all.
Who you?
It is being looked down upon because of your skin color. I work with a dude that he's like one of the most biggest people I know. But you know, as I've gotten older, I've gotten angry. I mean, I see where you're coming from. I don't know. I just think you gloss over. I just don't see where you.
You say I glossed over. I'm trying to figure it out. I'm sitting there asking you specific questions so I can figure out what's going on. I'm not trying to gloss anything over. I'm simply saying there are racists, obviously, and we're not denying that racism exists.
There's Black racists too.
I'm sorry?
There are Black racists too. I mean,
everybody has the capacity to be racist. Everybody does.
You could say that I'm racist against pretty much some of my own people.
But hang on a second. Let me ask you this, Butch. Is that based on their skin color or their behavior?
I would say that was systemic racism that we've never had a chance to actually make an impact.
Right.
Well, no, that's not what I'm asking you. What I'm asking you specifically.
What he just asked you was the way that you feel about some Black people, is that based on their behavior or it's because they're Black?
Oh no, that's based on the behavior. I mean, I have to be honest.
So let me ask.
But when they look at these people, when white look at these people, they're saying Black as a whole.
I get that.
As a whole, like all Black people.
But let's look at this. Let's take skin color out of the equation just for a minute. Okay, we're all the same exact color. Okay, and let's look into the human mind as far as and just kind of follow me on my crazy logic. Our outlook on the world around us, the world we can see, the world we can experience, is based off previous experiences, right? To some degree, memory. Okay. So when you have and I'll use you as an example. Okay, you're 8 years old. You're in school. You're one of 2 or 3 black kids in the school, and these white kids start picking on you, right? Because you're different. You just look different. You don't know why they're picking on you. They're just picking on you. Okay. Will that affect your perception of other people that look similar? Because that's the link that your mind goes from. They look a certain way, and they behave towards you in this cruel manner. Okay, and that formed an opinion that would last your entire life because of how you were treated by somebody that just picked on you because you were different.
See,
That's basically a stereotype.
growing up, all my friends were white.
Okay.
So basically, being in school, it was the black kids that didn't like me because all my friends were white. I didn't start feeling this way until I got older. I think changed to me was 16, being drug out of the car, thrown into a paddy wagon, and the cop lying, saying that I cursed, and I never said a curse word. I didn't even curse then.
Now, where did this happen? I'm curious.
I went to pick my sister up from a football game of Pensacola High. I was 16.
Okay, so this was in Pensacola. Okay.
Yeah.
So South Alabama.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. So
I already know.
I can relate with what you're talking about with regards to police behaving in a really shitty manner. Okay, and I'll break my own rule about swearing, but the fact is that those things do exist. Okay, and we can have a whole different episode on the need for police reform and that kind of stuff. But taking away the uniform and just looking at each other from the human element. Okay, police officers, and this is by no means excusing it. This is just painting a picture as to the why. Doesn't excuse it, doesn't say it's good or bad. It just says, how did we get here? Because this is how I think. It's like, how do we arrive at this location? Okay. So when that officer threw you up against the wall for no reason whatsoever, okay, horrible thing to have happen to you. I'm sorry that it did. Is it possible that behavior that this officer exhibited towards you was based on previous, although not warranted, previous behavior by other people conducting whatever it was that that you got his attention? Was that more behavior based, or do you think race based? Because my contention is that people's behavior will ring throughout memory a lot more effectively than skin color. Okay.
I can make this a little more simple. I can make this a little more simple. If you get bit by a dog every time you come across a dog, you're going to develop a fear of a dog. So
yeah,
one time you don't get bit by a dog, but you still have this fear and you're not going to trust it because every other time you got bit.
I would just say it like this. I would just grant that the police officer was racist. I would just say, he was freaking racist.
Yeah.
Now, so like now, are we? Because when we're angry and we hold a lot of anger, and we're actually hurting ourselves initially. So primarily, we're the ones who are affecting ourselves. We're letting that person have power over us. So like what I'm talking about here with this show is how to like take accountability and responsibility despite the world we live in, because we live in a screwed up world. Let's face it. We really
do.
I mean, so we can go through life.
I mean, I understand that too, but I'm just saying, if we're going to reach some kind of common ground and we just write this person off as racist, then we're never going to get anywhere. I'm saying don't use it as an excuse, but we kind of have to see each other's viewpoints. So
to a degree, but hold on, Sophia, hang on. The point I was alluding to, because, and again, I tend to be verbose, and I'm sorry about that, but my take is this. Okay, and I'll use this example. When I worked in Salt Lake City, I was a limousine driver, and we have these quinceañeras that I would pick up, these families that have, 5, 10, 15 kids, they're all 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. And we go to this, they get up, dressed up super nice. They look super cool. And I remember one time we stopped at McDonald's, okay, to go have, and they're dressed in this massive regalia that their parents spent a ton of money on.
Yeah.
And so we go into the McDonald's, okay, and there's this homeless white lady there, and she starts cursing out these kids in the quinceanera costumes, right? Why don't you go back to your country, you damn? And then she started using racial epithets and stuff. And so I was like, oh crap. So let me get, now there was a chaperone there at this particular event. And the chaperone was about 19, 20 years old. And she started going like, hold my baby. And she started like, getting really up in the face of this white lady. Like, you racist, this, that, and the other. And she was defending her cousin, which, hey, I would probably do the same thing if I was in that shoes. So to get the other kids kind of out of the problem, they all got their food. I shuffled them back into the limousine while they were having lunch, in effect. And I started talking to them because they were talking about, this lady's a racist. She's this, she's that. And I started talking to the kids and I go, look, that was pretty crappy, wasn't it? And I was talking to them pretty simply. I said shitty. And they're like, yeah, and I'm like, why do you think she did that? Well, because she's racist. I said, okay, well, let's dig a little deeper. Let's dig a little deeper into this. All right. And so I threw this out at the kids. Was anything she said true? And the kids start thinking about it and they're like, well, no. I said, then why do you give it any value? And they started thinking, they're like, that's kind of a good point. So I picked on the quinceanera for 1 second. There was one kid in the back that wasn't really paying attention. And so I go to the quinceanera and I go and I look at her and I go, you're a piece of crap. And when I said that, the kid in the back was like, what'd you call her? She got all mad, right? And so I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, if I said that and it's not true, what does that make me? And she's like, well, an a-hole. I said, well, that too, but it makes me a liar, right? So what if the only reason why I'm doing that is to get a rise out of you? I'm trying to control you, right? Mm-hmm. And they start thinking, they're like, okay, that's kind of an interesting point. And then it says, so why let them control you? So what's an alternative way to respond to that? You're a piece of crap. And I told her, I said, say that to me. And she says, you're a piece of crap. I says, okay. And I go, I never knew that. Okay. And I walked away. And that was the end of it. And then the person that said it to me was like, well, crap, what do I do now? And so I come back and I go, you see how you tried to give me something and I don't want it. And they're like, oh, this is, and it was like this moment of like clarity of like, this epiphany of, woo, that's a way to handle it. Right. Because I said, what if this person had some experience sometime in the past? And this is kind of what I was alluding to earlier. What if this person sometime in the past had an experience where they had a negative experience of somebody that appeared the same way? It was a behavior that triggered that memory. And they're like, you're a piece of crap, right? Well, if each person that receives that type of awful treatment, rather than responding in an angry way, which is what kind of Sophia was alluding to earlier, rather than respond angrily, just be like, well, I'm sorry you feel that way. And then it's hard for humanity to not emotionally respond to an attack because, that's kind of ingrained into our psyche. Somebody attacks you verbally, you want to.
Like, for me, I don't know.
That's actually a Hindu proverb as well.
Yeah, it's like, it's probably a great thing to not respond and turn the other cheek and all that stuff. But I guess my point is,
there's turning the other cheek, but there's also disarming the attacker, like from here.
That, and then
I think turning the other cheek is different because when somebody actually invades your space or actually puts hands on you, nobody's saying don't defend yourself.
Yeah.
Right. I'm gonna say
in a scenario where I got pulled out of a car, I had guns pulled at me and everything, okay? Like straight up. And I didn't do it. I didn't do anything wrong. I could have responded irate and made the situation even worse and got my ass shot. But I remained calm and I knew in my mind, I know I didn't do nothing wrong and I'm gonna deal with this in a legal way. After.
Yeah, and that is your best tool, regardless of what color your nationality you are. That is your very, very best tool. Is when you run into an officer that's being a complete tool bag, okay, a whole fleet of Snap-on trucks, okay, just be like, all right. One time I was coming home from the grocery store, and this cop, I was at a 4-way stop. This car stopped right in front of the cop, and I'm gonna go, that guy's gonna get pulled over. Cop pulls me over. Like, what the hell did I do? So he says, I pulled you over because you have a crack in the windshield. And I'm like, and I look at my windshield. There's a little tiny crack at the very bottom of the windshield that goes up about a half inch above the black part of the of the windshield. I'm going, you're so full of shit. Just like, you lying sack.
What the hell? I even see that shit.
Yeah. And so he runs my license, and it turns out that it was an old speeding ticket that I hadn't paid, that I thought my wife paid like 2 years prior. So there's just a warrant for my arrest out for like 2 years, right? Which tells you how many times I get pulled over at this point. And so he's like, okay, I'm going to arrest you. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I, and to top things off, I was pulling into my apartment complex. My kid's bus was pulling up, and my kids were getting off the bus as I'm getting arrested, right in front of my kids. I'm like, oh God, this is terrible. And so as I'm getting arrested, as he's cuffing me, the officer, okay, is jostling me around for no reason whatsoever, none whatsoever, trying to get me to react. So I just go ragdoll. And my wife was watching this, and she's like, okay, and she saw the cop kind of being like, just trying to get me to react somehow, man. I'm bored today, man. React, And I'm like, no, I ain't doing this. Okay. And so I go to the holding cell, and as he's putting me in there, he whispers in my ear, man, hey man, I'm real sorry I did that to you. And I'm like, oh, okay. And my wife bailed me out a couple hours later, no big deal. I had to pay all the back fees and stuff. It was like $1,000. But the officer was, for some reason, and mind you, in South Florida, I'm a white guy. Okay. In Salt Lake City, I'm not of Cuban descent. I just crossed the fence Mexican.
Wow.
That's how they see me. In my,
that's
like
shit.
There was, I used to work at this one place where I shaved off my beard and my goatee, my mustache. And this kid, fresh off his mission, like 2-3 months earlier, he goes, oh, you shaved off your mustache and your goatee. You look a lot less Mexican-y now. What?
That's worse.
And I'm just like, oh boy. And I didn't know how to take that, because it's like, going back to when I was a kid. So I tie this all back to behavior, right? Mm-hmm. And I think more so than skin color, the way my purview of the world is I kind of judge people based on their behavior, right? And so if you behave in a certain way, you could be yellow, purple, I don't care, right? It's your behavior and how you treat others and how you treat me and how we interact. And I would like to see kind of more of that proliferate, within society.
With social engineering, just like racism within the police departments are fostered, like we have this systemic sort of racism that goes on in different forms, but also the way that they want to make black minorities in general feel is
right.
Kind of like,
but here's the thing, and
like trying to make black people feel like, hey, you are
the white guy's after you.
Yeah, you're a victim. You can't trust white people, man, at all. Right. So you need to really get behind this politician because he's for you.
Exactly.
That's a way of propaganda to get votes and to get power and stuff like that.
Correct.
And so you can kind of look at it that way, that you're being manipulated like a puppet by certain segments of society.
Because for the last 60 years
you live in, and you kind of get away from, doing what you can to make life as good as it can be, because really that's all you can do anyways. But they want you to, believe and buy into the victim mentality, because that's how they get black people to vote them in office, and that's how they get their money and their power. And that's the whole reason behind all that.
But the goal of that is to have power. You look at the great society that LBJ launched, in 1964.
Who's a Republican or what?
I'm trying to ask Butch, are you a Democrat?
Who, me?
Yeah.
I'm an independent.
Hell yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm an independent. I'm not I like I like Republicans, not this MAGA crap that's going on now. But I like true Republicans. I vote Republican, but I'm not.
You're not tied to the party. You're like me.
Not tied to any party. I don't like.
Nor should.
I voted for Biden, but I don't think I had a choice.
Well, let me ask you this. As far as that, because Trump has plenty of things that he can be ridiculed for, and deservedly so. Okay, but do you feel that Trump's a racist, and if so, why?
I don't think he's a racist
Okay,
because before he started being a politician, he was hanging around a lot of black people, hanging around a lot of rampants, you know.
you know what he hung around? He hung around anybody that he could help. You know, if he helped them make money, he was making money.
Right.
Okay,
And I
you look at
think
how
he
he
just-
worked with.
Moral standard.
I don't think that, can I say something? Because we're dragging this out. Like, I don't think that Trump was a racist or is a racist. I think that politicians in general cannot relate to the people at all whatsoever, a lot of times. And with that being said, not only that, we should have term limits, because let's face it, some of these motherfuckers
Yeah,
are way
Senate,
too motherfucking old. And
Yeah.
with that being said, I think that all these politicians are just very far removed from what the people actually need. So
mhm.
we as conservatives, since conservatism is a spectrum, because everybody thinks that conservatism is automatically far right and it's Nazism and all this other stuff. But we on this channel, we're trying to promote, not promote, but we stand for the needs of the people. What can we do to get along instead of being divided? Because at the end of the day, let's look at what's going on in the current climate. Everything is divided. People are so divided, it's insane. And so that's why we're talking about social engineering, because a lot of these movements are actually and literally funded by people who don't like this country. For example,
Right.
George Soros, he's putting all his money into Black Lives Matter movements, but that money that was raised
Enrich the people.
for Black people
It
never went to
enriched the
Black
people at the
people.
top.
So look, I'm just saying we need to stop being fooled by these people and take our power back. Even, yeah, we acknowledge there is racism. I experienced extreme racism. I've had my ribs kicked in for being Black and all that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, I'm not going to let that keep me down and from getting what the hell I deserve. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not going to be a victim. If anything, I'm going to be a victor, and I'm going to overcome these obstacles. So we're not going to overcome that if we keep seeing ourselves as victims. That's all we're trying to say. Power back. You see what I'm saying? And that's all of us, like all of us individuals in America, because like we've been talking about, you know, we're very diverse. Everybody here, background and family tree, you know. So with that being said, that's kind of where we're coming from. We're not denying that racism exists, but
And I don't think anybody. I don't think anybody's denying that racism exists. Racism has always existed. I think it will always.
I don't know if y'all
exist.
can hear me
It's how
or
much-
what, because everybody's going in and out.
Yeah, it's you were freezing. You're
Am I
frozen.
just talking to the?
No, we can hear you.
You're frozen.
My
Because everybody's screaming.
my contention is this: racism in some
Butch
form
looks
will always
frozen.
exist.
Scott's going.
Yeah, she's lagging. but she's
Okay,
frozen.
Yeah,
everybody
she's like
back?
hard. But here's my contention: or racism will always exist. It has always existed in some form or another. It's how much oxygen we give that concept that keeps it alive. You go back 10, 15 years ago, right? 12 years ago, 8 years ago, even. The whole concept of the KKK was so minimal, was so like hard, like nobody gave them any attention. Why? Because they're insignificant. Because they're it's a bunch of bluster, a bunch of hot air. They've lost, you know, they had lost so much, you know, power that they had, like, you know, from the 1920s and, you know, and on through there, 1890s and all the way through the 30s and stuff up until World War II, that they had almost been completely extinguished, short of, you know, maybe a couple thousand. But now in the last, you know, in kind of the Trump era, right, somebody decided to breathe life back into the concept of the Klan. Like, who the hell did that? You know what I mean? And so you look back and I can kind of give you an idea of who did that, you know? And it was the elitist, you know, kind of the WF types, the you know, the social engineering types that say, hey, wait a minute, wait. We need to revitalize this race war so that we can create a problem then that we can come in as the heroes and solve.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's when you started seeing all the patterns of, you start looking at the lexicon of the word racist and Nazi and how prevalent and how popular they became just in the last 5 or 7 years or 10 years even, right? Where you and I are in a disagreement, right? And then I can, and you can retort, oh, you're just a racist. It's a dismissive comment. It's like,
Well, it's easy
Not
to
only
say.
not only that, the progress that has been made is also not acknowledged when we do this type of stuff and just start calling everything racist. So when real racism does occur, nobody's going to take it serious
because
anymore.
it's a lazy
and the
rebuttal.
progress that we've made, and the progress that we've made is practically undone. And now people may actually become racist again because you got people running around calling everything racist. And
exactly.
now,
The value of the
just
term has
madness.
been so the term has been so overused. Its value is value as being a pejorative. It doesn't mean anything anymore because it's been used for everything.
Right.
Milk is racist. Milk is racist. Really?
Let's
Come on,
let Butch respond, man.
Yes.
So
No.
we're having lagging issues, I think.
Yeah.
What's this
I
food business?
understand where, I mean,
That's why
Mike, I understand what you're saying. And that word is thrown around too much. Now I still believe there's systemic racism. But I do believe that a lot of the issues is that some people just don't want to pull themselves up or do what is extra. With me, I had both my parents. My mom didn't play, and she taught us early to respect everybody. So, I mean, since I was a kid, it's yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Yes, sir,
and
no.
that's how I was raised. In fact, that's how most kids that I know that are in their early mid 40s. That's kind of how we were raised down here.
Right.
Kind of southern,
But
southern hospitality type.
I will agree with Bill that there is systemic racism. I just happen to
define
think
that. Define that as.
But I'm about to.
When you say systemic, what does it you mean?
I'm about to.
Okay.
I think that systemic racism goes back to social engineering and manipulating people's opinions and feelings. So with that being said, you got Democrats who constantly insist that we're victims, who constantly insist that we get government handouts, who constantly insist that we live in projects, who constantly insist that we abort our babies. And so with that being said, that in itself is systemic racism because the effect of it causes us to be in a perpetual cycle of poverty. You see what I'm saying?
Well, and not only
they want to keep everything boring. They want to keep everything going because they want to stay in office.
Of course.
And you have the media. CNN is the worst.
But they want our votes, so they keep offering the woman, oh, you can marry the government and you don't need to be with the black man. And
that all started under LBJ.
Right, but
accelerated under LBJ.
I'm trying to tell Bill, because what he said, I'm not in disagreement with him, but I disagree on who's doing it. Because a lot of times this whole rhetoric about, it's conservatives doing all of this.
I know. Now I don't believe actually, because I vote conservative on most issues. I vote conservative.
Bill was a conservative. Yeah.
On most issues, I do. And now I don't like the Democrats to give too much away, and people are just used to just getting that check every month. They don't want to get up, find a job, go to school, make some of themselves, and
learn new skills, etc.
You're right.
This is what I was trying to get to earlier. Is that when you look at the core result of the Great Society? Okay, because I think the Great Society was the biggest move towards disabling the Black community in this country from advancing from where they were pre-civil the pre-civil rights era, okay, to where they are now. Okay, so when you look at the history of the Civil Rights Bill, the first iterations of it was a bipartisan effort under, I think it was the Truman administration, which didn't get a lot of steam because the Democrats were in power. They had the Senate and they had the House. Okay, and it didn't. JFK was trying to move that, trying to get that bill through the House and Senate, to get it passed, but there was problems within the Democratic Party in getting that bill through commission, through all the stuff, right? And one of the biggest opponents of the bill was Robert Byrd, okay, which coincidentally,
Let me guess, his
Hillary.
Democrat?
Yeah, oh yeah, he was West Virginia. He was on the Senate for 50, 60 years. The guy, a long time, and he held one of the longest filibusters on the Civil Rights Bill, mind you, okay, in this history of the Senate against the Civil Rights Bill. Yet, and this is the guy that he was a exalted cyclops of the Klan back in the 40s. Okay, so this guy's dyed in the wool, card carrying racist. Okay. And I'm talking blue blood Democrat as the day is long. And a lot of folks don't understand the historical context of that, right? So when JFK was assassinated and LBJ took over, he saw an opportunity to get that bill, get it finished through the Senate and get it to sign it. But his motivations weren't for civil rights.
Nope.
His motivations were for getting the black population as a voting bloc. Okay, because he was going to carry the flag of, hey, I signed this bill, and so now you owe me, black people. You owe me. You owe the Democrats. We gave you this freedom. You better pay us back with interest. Right? And so throughout the earliest stages of, the enactment of the Great Society was you started seeing more and more government agents, okay, government workers, social workers, going door to door and being like, hey, is your man providing for you? Oh, no, he's in jail. Why is he in jail for? Oh, he had this and he had this happen and he had a problem. Well, you know what? If you divorced him, you'll get reliable money from the government. Well, what's a mother to do, right? You got a mom at home, the dad's in jail, okay? She's got 1, 2, 3 kids, whatever. She needs a reliable income to feed the kids. You put anybody in that situation, they're going to be like, okay, I guess I'll do that. So now you have the black father taken out of the home, which is one of the biggest travesties that ever faced this country. Okay, and I'm not just
I'm the first witness of that shit.
Yeah, and fathers in general, but specifically the black father. And I'll use another personal example. Growing up here in South Florida, when I was in my mid-teens, my father and I, we used to install satellite systems for inner cities. And so I would go through wearing shorts and a tank top in the summertime, knocking door to door in some of the most scariest neighborhoods you ever seen in. And they're like, what's this white kid doing out here? Right? And I'd be knocking on doors. Hey man, we're doing satellites. You want to, you want to jump in? We got a deal going. And they all knew who we were. So I walked down Liberty City, man. Nobody gave me a hard time. I wasn't scared. I wasn't scared of walking through there. Maybe I wouldn't walk through there at night, but just because there was other elements that came out at night that had nothing to do with me. And so kind of going back to this other thing is when you start looking at the effects of removing the father out of the home, and then we're looking at what, 3 generations now, maybe 4 of single mothers without a stable father influence, a biological father influence that is good, because the other element or side of this coin is that those fathers, they were getting picked on throughout the 60s and throughout the 70s, and the systemic racism that you're talking about that existed, very prevalent, especially in the police, in the policing, especially in the South. Okay.
Yeah.
To where you'd have these black men being arrested for the smallest offenses. Okay. Oh, you got a joint on you. You're going to jail. Oh, your tail lights out. Oh, you got a warrant. You didn't show up in court. You're going
shot
to
in
jail.
the back, shot in the back, and all that.
Right.
Yeah.
And all the things that lead up to that, right? So you have an entire several generations of minority communities that have done just trying to exist and trying to get through the whole thing. But then you have an element of like, hey, we need to keep these people, like what Butch was saying earlier, keep them under your thumb. Okay. Well, what's the easiest way to do that? pick them off for any possible violation they could get into. Okay. Oh,
Yeah,
and you got pulled over.
And
because-
Kamala Harris, she's notorious for that, ain't she?
Exactly.
Oh, and I want to
Yeah.
interject really quick. Forrest Taylor, I think this was directed at Sophia. He said, what? Democrats have been insisting that Black women abort their babies? Where's your evidence?
My evidence is just like liquor stores are on every corner in Black communities, the same way you will see Planned Parenthood all over the place in the hood. And if you go back,
actually,
if you
Hold on, let's
If you go
Go ahead.
back-
Go ahead. Go ahead.
if you go back to who founded what's now called Planned Parenthood, which is Margaret Sanger, she was a eugenicist, and her whole goal was, which we did a segment on that last time, her whole goal was to control
Eradicate the Black race.
eradicate the Black race. And so with that being said, when it comes to abortion and Black people, it's harming us. It's a form of genocide. It's a form of ethnic cleansing. And I can give
Absolutely.
you all the facts. I can give you all the facts on that.
Of course. Well, now Forrest Taylor is saying the claim was, though, that Democrats insist that Black women abort their babies.
Well, there's the convenience and how it is marketed. Okay, this is a marketing ploy. Okay,
Right, but
So-
that's what I'm saying. See, he be trying to look, man. What's his name? Forrest.
Forrest Taylor.
You be doing semantics a lot. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Go ahead, Mike.
Y'all been going at it all day. I've been going with them too, though.
So, this is kind of a very loose biblical reference, and I'll butcher the heck out of it, but you'll know me by the fruits of my labor. Okay, something along those lines, right? So when you look at the end result of like what has actually happened, right? As the concept of white supremacy, okay, if the goal of white supremacy is to eradicate minority races, Blacks, Hispanics, whatever, right? Well, it's a lot of work to go out and hunt everybody down because there's a lot of them, right? Well, what's an easier way to do it? Convince them to do it
Social
themselves.
engineering, marketing, propaganda.
Social engineering.
Yeah.
Convince them to kill
healthcare.
themselves off before they're even born.
Convince Black women that
say-
we're dying in large numbers from childbirth. Keep lying to Black women. That's how you do it. And that's what Democrats do. That's what Democrats do.
What makes social engineering effective and clever is to not come out and just say, Black women, we want you
Exactly.
to commit abortion. Like,
Yeah,
they're not gonna do
because
that.
nobody's
They
going to
see,
agree
the
to
thing
that.
is-
We don't.
Nobody's
The
going to
thing
agree to
is,
that.
The thing is, they disguise everything. They change words, terminologies. They call
Right.
something that's bad for you, health care, and all this. And they always make it seem like it's in the name of safety. It's for your safety.
Of course.
That's what we're talking
Yeah.
about. What's his name? The guy. Where is he at? In the back?
Who?
Bush?
Backstage? No,
No,
the
Bush is
Forrest.
Oh, Forrest Taylor.
Guy.
Yeah, he's
Of course.
no,
yeah.
he's in the chat.
So that's what I'm saying. You say, where's your proof and your evidence? Well, it's right there. You just got to read between the lines.
Well, a lot of folks don't understand the historical context of where Margaret Sanger came from. She
Right.
spoke in front of
Yeah,
numerous
whole show on
groups.
there last week.
There's
Yeah.
writings. In fact, I need to find it. Somebody sent me a narration of one of her books talking about the Negro problem, right? And I'm hearing this, and I'm hearing this narration. I'm like, my eyes are like bugging out of my head. I'm like, why don't more people know about what this crazy person said, right? And so going back to what I was kind of saying earlier is that if there was a way,
Oh, and
to
one fun fact to that. Planned Parenthood 2 years ago had to actually admit to the fact that she was a racist eugenicist,
yeah,
and they
couldn't deny it.
basically removed her. They basically removed her name from the whole, canceled
Like
her
that's-
name, so to speak.
well, yeah, but that's going to actually solve anything. Oh well, we were started
It
by
won't,
this crazy,
but I-
eugenicist. But she's out of our lexicon now, so it's no longer a problem.
Right.
Definitely.
But I just wanted to throw that in there because They even had to admit it. It's not like they quit doing it, but
Yeah. So I mean, there's evidence, there's facts that we're basing these ideas on. It's not like we come on this show and just start spewing a bunch of hate. Like, I don't even see it as hate. I see it as we're actually trying to help empower, for me, especially Black people. Like, I have Black people in my family.
Mhm.
So I'm not going to say anything racist whatsoever. Like, I'll get my ass kicked by my whole family.
Well, but
I just think we
everything is
just
racist.
think
So
we
I
need to
mean,
get-
where do we?
I just
Where's
think
the
we need to
line?
get beyond. I just think we need to get beyond solely identifying based on your skin color. But I do understand, we have genetic differences and things like that, and what's good
Sure.
for one group of people
But
may
that's
not
what
be
makes
good
us unique
for
and
others.
interesting.
And it's right, and it's okay to acknowledge those things, but no race is above any other race. That's all I'm saying.
Here's
am
the
I
other
Black?
problem.
I mean, yeah, I call myself Black, but at the end of the day, I'm a little bit of everything. You know what I'm saying? And what does
Yeah,
it
but
really
we
mean
all
to
are.
be Black?
There's no such thing
Right.
as a pure race. The whole
Bunch of
concept of a pure
Oreos
race
over
is just stupidity. Oh, I'm a pure white person. Sure you are, pal. You ever do a DNA test? Let's prove that wrong.
Right.
Look, man.
Especially in America.
And look, here's
yeah.
the other thing about social engineering that really boggles my mind is this inconsistency. If you ask any, especially a far left person, should you judge people by the color of their skin or their race? They will all unanimously get up and say, no, that is wrong. Yet that is exactly what they do. That is exactly what they do. They say,
watch out for that white person.
I have a good example for that because I got into several arguments with a couple of leftist white women, and that lady got all mad at me because I said I think abortion harms the Black community more than anything. So if you think that's good for you
really
as
does.
a white woman, my fight isn't your fight. White feminists, what they fight for, that's not my fight because we're trying to get our men back in the home. We're not trying to fight our men. We want them back in the home. So you got a whole nother problem over there that's not got nothing to do with us. And when feminism first started coming out or whatever, we had shit to do with that. We were still fighting not to be segregated and shit like that. We had nothing to do with that. And when it comes to abortion, it just hurts us more in the long run because how are we going to economically grow when we're constantly killing off our babies in the womb, which is 4 times at a higher rate, 4 times higher than anybody else. So then she got all mad and she was like, you need abortion. And okay, that's fine. You're right. I'm not going to try to help you anymore. Then I'm going to just let all you Black women die from childbirth. And I'm like, what? Where are you getting that shit from? And she's like,
I think those statistics are probably the same as white people or real close to.
Yeah, but let me show you how she fucked up the statistics. So she tried to tell me there's
language.
Excuse me. We can say that. YouTube ain't gonna cancel that. Anyway,
ranking, my dear, ranking.
Okay, sorry.
You're good.
She was saying that Black women have the highest rate of death during childbirth. So I looked into that, and one of the factors that contributes to that a lot is that a lot of Black women are actually murdered by the man who impregnated them. You see, they be being slick. But they make it seem like we all have.
I would have guessed it had more to do with prenatal care. You know what I mean?
That's part of it, but that's actually a big factor that a lot of Black women are murdered by, the man that got them pregnant because they don't want to. I guess they know they're not going to be there and they don't want to pay child support or whatever. I don't know what the case may be, or because
I'm not familiar with that.
Or because we pick men that are criminals. I don't know, because I have too in the past. And,
but that's women. Women in general tend to do that a lot. I don't know why. It's weird.
Well, it's when you don't have a father figure that sets a good example. That's where it starts. You
Well,
don't
yeah,
know
no,
how
that
to
much
pick,
I agree with.
you ain't gonna know how to pick a good man if you're measuring against the dad you had who was a damn hoodlum in the fucking
Well,
book.
yeah.
I'm,
Well,
I'm just saying,
you look at
you know.
you look at the effects that abortion as a whole has had on this nation, where, you know, depending on where you read, anywhere between, some stats say 9 million black children have been aborted, some say as many as 20 million have been aborted, right? Do
It's
you
actually
think that,
it's about 8, yeah, it's about 18, somewhere around
yeah,
there. From my
so
last
somewhere between 9 million,
research
20
that I
million. Let's go right in the middle, and let's say it's 13 million, you know, black babies have been aborted. Do you think the black population, as far as percentage of the country, would be higher? Of course it would, right?
Of course it would.
Wouldn't be. It wouldn't be at 12. It wouldn't be at 12%. You know, 6.5% black women, 6% black men, or whatever. You know, whatever the exact stat is, right? And when you look at what the black culture has contributed to the greatness of this country, okay, from the very beginning, where you had people that had been slaves for, you know, for 10, 20 years, their family, their offspring, whatever, and the technology and the contributions that black culture has brought to the fabric of the United States, okay, is immeasurable. We're talking, you know, technology, in industry, music, okay, food, okay, nailed it right there, food, okay. This nation would be nowhere near as awesome as it is without black culture, without Hispanic culture, without German culture, without all these cultures. And the fabric that makes this country so amazing and unique is because of the contributions that, even though the ancestral history, as horrifying as it is, you can have good things come from those things. Okay, you can have good things sprout from horrifying beginnings. Okay, and so rather than resurrect, you know, oh well, we need to teach kids about, you know, about the racial, you know, atrocities of Americans, and, you know, the founding fathers. I'm like, well, hang on. When you look at it from the cultural reality that these founding fathers were trying to change, they knew they couldn't change it. Okay, this is the law. Everybody do it. If you don't do it, we're going to shoot you. You have to change the direction of the ship. Okay, and you take a very large ship in a large body of water, and it takes a long time to turn. Okay, and it took many years, and it had to be done in stages. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Okay. And so look at where we're at now versus where we were at back then. Now you look at African immigrants that come from Ghana, that come from Zimbabwe, that come from Nigeria, they come to the U.S., or they come to any other, you know, well, U.S. specifically, but, you know, that they're 70% more likely within one generation to become upper middle class than black Americans born in the United States. Okay. And there's an article, I think it was under Black Entrepreneur Magazine. I may have the publication wrong, but they specifically point out that they took a survey of you know, African-born immigrants that have come to the United States. They learn the language, and they became, within 5, 10, 15 years, they became really well off. I know. I worked with them
that are from Kenya.
Yeah,
and all of them, every one of them.
Yeah. So if they look the same as other black Americans, but they're succeeding, well, where's the root cause of this? It's here. Because the education system that has been controlled by leftists for the last 75 years has been telling the black children growing up, you're a damn victim.
You have no future.
And look,
here.
I want to reiterate that too, Mike. And then I think we need to go back into the video, but to make this last little point, but that laugh sounds so insidious.
Insidious. Wow, I haven't heard that before. I heard adorable, but you know,
sound like
adorable,
that sound like a little witch. I don't know who lied to you, but I'm right there with you. Anyway, make a long story short, my son, like I said, they had no concept of racism. And when he started going to middle school and he started learning about manifest destiny, I mean, that was like the constant topic in every subject, manifest destiny and all that. And then he comes home one day and he's like, man, Mom, why do white people hate me? And I'm like, what makes you think that? Like, what white person did anything to you? And he's like, not that, but I mean, he started telling me what he was learning in school and how his work was constantly focused on that, to the point where my daughter, who was in kindergarten at the time, they made her watch a video, and I was homeschooling her during her kindergarten year. They made her watch a video as her assignment, teaching her how Martin Luther King had to sit separate and eat his food separately at a separate table. And she got all sad and almost started crying and was like, why would somebody treat people like that? And it's just like, why even do that to a 5-year-old? You know, like that's too much to handle. And so my son was feeling like a target at this point, because that's what he's being taught constantly. You're a target. In America, you're always going to be seen as less than, you know, and all of a sudden he loses confidence in himself. He feels like he's a target, and he starts to think with victim mentality. And I'm still, you know, trying to undo that, because at first I wasn't aware of it. I became more aware of it when I decided to homeschool my boys for 2 years. And I started seeing the curriculum and everything that's being taught to them. And that's when I was like, damn, no wonder, you know, your kids come home acting like somebody you don't even know, because they're being constantly bombarded with this type of stuff. And so before that, he had no concept of that. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, how is CRT helping those children? You know, or and then
it's
all
not.
and then all the white
Because-
kids feel
because-
like they're responsible, you know, but overall,
Yeah.
you're tearing down the confidence of all these children, you know?
Well,
that's
and
kind of
the
my-
reason why they're doing it, and this was actually just recently revealed by Project Veritas, was they had this I can't remember the guy's name, but out of, I think it was Connecticut or Vermont, this vice principal, he was doing all the hiring, you know, and said, well, I'm not going to hire anybody over the age of 30, because over 30 they become more conservative. I won't hire Catholics. You know, I have these questions, you know, structured in such a way that depending on how their answers are, I can tell if they're conservative or not. And if they're conservative, I'm not going to hire them. Right. So now he's put on administrative leave, but that's not one isolated incident. That's throughout the entire school system in our country, public schools,
Right.
and in many
Well, the
private
thing
schools.
is,
So it starts there. It starts there, teaching the kids, teaching the kids to be
Hang
like
on.
this victim mindset. I got a really good mind track here. This victim mindset, because that's when they're most malleable. That's when they're most easily convinced to concepts. So that if they can implant this victim mentality early on, they will carry that with them throughout their entire lives, which means they will always be, you know, subjugated by, you know, well, I'm here to protect you. I'm here to do all these nice things for you. All you got to do is give me your vote.
yeah. Well, you know, it's like, for me, like, I hate this guy, Butch, but it's not because of race.
Why do you hate
wrong.
Butch? He's a great guy. Look at his face.
I hate-
He's like one of the nicest, friendliest faces I've ever seen.
I hate him because I don't like the way he came into the show, but
Huh? I'm confused. What did I miss just now?
not
Was that
because he's black.
sarcasm? What?
Not
That
because
was
he's
sarcasm.
black, just because I don't like this guy's face. But anyways, let's get on.
I
to
like
the
his
video,
face.
man. This is
He
great.
has a very kind face.
I'm just,
Thank
I
you.
like his I like his freckles. They're so cute.
Thank you, Sophie.
He's a ginger.
You got a crush. Thank you, Sophie. I got a crush on
You're
Scott
welcome.
here.
huh?
Hey, Scott, I just got a P2. I got a bounce, dude.
Huh? You got
All right,
bounce
Butch.
out? Okay, man.
Hey,
Well,
good
it
night.
was good having you,
Hope to chat
Butch.
with you again.
Yeah, come on through again, man.
I will, man. I will. It's nice talking to you, Mike. You too, Sophie. But yeah, I admit you guys make some great points.
Cool.
You really do. You make some great points. So,
Thanks.
all right, I will give it. Yeah, let me go to work.
You.
All right, boss.
All
Take
right.
care, brother. Be
I'll
safe,
take
brother.
it easy.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and start up the video. This is a part where I wanted to get to here.
All right.
So,
And dictatorship
Don't
meant
interrupt my.
that all the land was owned by a single ruler or by a small oligarchy. Then in the modern age, machines became more important than land. Politics became the struggle to control the machines. And dictatorship meant that too many of the machines became concentrated in the hands of the government or of a small elite. Now data is replacing both land and machines as the most important asset. Politics becomes the struggle to control the flows of data. And dictatorship now means that too much data is being concentrated in the hands of the government or of a small elite. The greatest danger that now faces liberal democracy is that the revolution in information technology will make dictatorships more efficient than democracies. In the 20th century, democracy and capitalism defeated fascism and communism because democracy was better at processing data and making decisions. Given 20th century technology, it was simply inefficient to try and concentrate too much data and too much power in one place. But it is not a law of nature that centralized data processing is always less efficient than distributed data processing. With the rise of artificial intelligence and machine learning, it might become feasible to process enormous amounts of information very efficiently in one place, to take all the decisions in one place, and then centralized data processing will be more efficient than.
So yeah, that's a real concern, especially now. We can even see that manifesting in the world, and everybody on each side is complaining about it. You know, that's why everybody has echo chambers and whatnot. But you know, because the whole idea is to, you know, even it kind of reminds me of these fact checkers. Like now they provide fact checking so that they can tell you what's factual and what's not, right? Could that be social engineering? What do you think?
Absolutely. No, it
Of course
absolutely
it
is a component of the social engineering, because the fact checkers, when you look into the backgrounds of who these fact checkers are, right? They're the ones that get to, you know, like who dubbed them. Okay, Facebook has their group of fact checkers and Twitter has their group of fact checkers and stuff.
They're
right?
first of all non-elected, and I heard one of them
they're
actually
not
used to work.
well.
One of them actually used to work for CNN.
Of course, and a lot of them have ties to, you know, the establishment, whether that be, you know, establishment Republicans, establishment Democrats, but more so on the Democrat side as far as I'm concerned. And when you look at how they're the ones kind of in charge of crafting the narrative, and Facebook and Twitter, they pass it off to them. Oh, we're not the ones, you know, fact checking. It's those guys, right? So when they get it wrong, do they issue corrections? Not common. In fact, I'd say no. So they're the ones crafting the narrative because they're either adherent to this globalistic type of environment, and they want to see this one world government kind of thing, which is what WEF and WHO and, you know, the Bilderbergs and all that stuff. That's kind of what the end goal is to get there. Is we're all living in this Star Trek, you know, Earthling type of environment, right? And so.
Yeah, it's
There's
to the
too
point
many.
now where it's to the point now where be gay to save the environment, to save the planet. Like it's wrong.
Well,
straight.
Well, and that's a whole different fustercluck of you know.
I'm just saying.
My word.
Sorry, I have to.
No, hey, no, you're good. You're good. But you know, by taking away the individual's ability to fact check for themselves, okay, the truth will always work its way to the top. Okay, you know, a common phrase that you hear is you know, a lie travels around the world before the truth can even strap on its shoes. Okay, yeah. And so when you start looking at, you know, how the control of the flow of information, okay, just like what recently got released with, as far as the FBI going over to, you know, to Zuckerberg and saying, hey, there's going to be this data dump, you know, so keep an eye open for it, you know, and downrank it and don't let it spread too much. Twitter took a whole different process, and no, we're going to automatically ban anybody who mentions anything about the Hunter Biden laptop. And that's one easy and recent example of how the flow of information to deny the electorate information that would have, you know, change their perception on what, you know, reality really was. And that was going on, you know, from the moment that Trump was, you know, elected, or before that, when he ran for office, when he announced he was running for office. See, the biggest contribution that Trump, I think, did to the country was that he kind of pulled back the curtain on the establishment. That's one reason why the establishment hates him so much.
He did, but I got beef with him because if he knew all this in advance and all of that, you know what I'm saying? Like, why did they not do anything about it? I feel like they're all in it together because.
Well, let me address that, because if you see Trump how I see Trump, a blowhard, a-hole, okay, outsider when it comes to in the political sphere. Because remember, the first 2 years of his presidency, we had, the Republicans had a supermajority. They had the Congress and they had the Senate, okay, and the party did not back him for the first couple of years because he was the outsider, right? And that was when he was kind of coming out with the whole, drain the swamp kind of thing, because he knew that his own party, he had adversaries within his own party. And in that first 2 years of his term, they were fighting him on, all sorts of stuff. And that wasn't, that was, and he didn't know, he knew there was a problem, but without being from the inside, he couldn't see it in great detail. And as he got more and more experience being in office and seeing all these things kind of working against him, he got easily distracted by, the media and calling him all out. And he felt it's so important, this was his biggest, kind of like fly in the ointment kind of thing. He got so distracted by the media calling him all sorts of things. And, oh, you're a white supremacist and all that, and racist. He got too distracted at the task at hand. And if he runs again, trying to fight something that he really, had he ignored it and just focused on the work and be like every once in a while, okay, I didn't say that, but whatever. We wouldn't be where we're at now. He would have been reelected, no problem.
And it seemed like the Trump administration was engaging in social propaganda too. Like they were trying to always clean up his messes. They were always trying to put out that, the pandemic is going to be gone in like 6 months. It'll be gone magically. It's going to disappear.
Well, now there is some nuance to that. Okay, Trump's biggest personality trait, okay, flawed as it may be, is he wants to sell an idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to take a very negative situation like the pandemic and try to paint it in the most hopeful light possible. Hey, this is not that big of a deal. We're going to get through this. I suspect he oversold, right? Oversold, underdelivered. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so had he taken, different measures as far as, hey, making it seem more serious, that would have been one less thing to attack him on. Right.
Right. So that was the thing. He kept trying too hard to where it would backfire. And that's why he's always involved in all this controversy and can never get out of, he talks too much, he tweets too much, he's all of these things. And he comes across as a blowhard. Like I couldn't stand watching the guy. Like whenever he came on TV, I just turned the shit off because it's like, I'd lose brain cells listening to the dude. Like,
yeah.
At the end of the day,
you know why?
But here's the funny thing about it. At the end of the day, the economy was much better
his
than
policies. Yeah,
huge. The black community was had more jobs, lowest rate of unemployment.
Exactly.
He had prison reform that was affecting a lot of black people in a good way.
But he hated black people.
And yet he hated black.
If he hated black people, why did he want him out of jail?
Well, ask Angela Stanton King about that one.
Yeah.
Precisely.
And our border, and we had tighter border security, which I was really for as well. So I mean, there was a lot of great things that he did that went unnoticed because he was so busy fighting stupid stuff and tweeting dumb shit. Like, dude,
exactly. That was his biggest flaw.
Focus on the job, man.
Focus on the job. Dude, I sent him a letter. I went to the White House website and I actually typed up, dude, focus on what you're, ignore this noise. Ignore this noise, man. This is you're gonna, I remember typing out the letter, you know what I mean? And I'm saying, dude,
but see, that's all part of the game, though. That's what I'm trying to say, man.
The same part, Sophia, is that the people were right there with him too. Like my dad, who was a big Trump supporter at the time, he's not anymore. He can't stand Trump anymore. He's like, because of you, man, we've got Biden. thank you, Trump. You just really screwed up. That's his big thing against Trump. But he said he was right there engaged in all the rhetoric and the problems that Trump had brought on himself. And I kept trying to tell my dad, all that stuff is so stupid and irrelevant. Like, let's focus on solutions, not all this bad communication and rhetoric and all that stuff. Because he did divide people, in my opinion. He did do a lot to divide people. Not intentionally, I don't know, but just because he wasn't a great communicator and he was too much of a salesman. He was trying to implement that, deal maker attitude, and he'd always fall short on it, And people, it just
but then,
gave people
I
more
kind of
doubt.
like that aspect. I actually kind of like that aspect about him because the way he handled things, that are business related, concerning the United States. I think I actually like that part about him.
I like
and those are the things he can be praised for sure.
I like how he trolled the media. I did like
yes,
that.
and that was brilliant because he related that made him relatable to a lot of people to where like, wow, that was pretty spicy. That's a hot take, right?
Yeah.
But
I would say that too. He was actually more so. I mean, yeah, in a way he was kind of in his own bubble, but then sometimes he did sound more relatable to the people than a lot of other.
Dude, he'd have expensive steaks with ketchup on them. I mean, how like just just average Joe is that, right?
I like the way he pushed that when he went overseas and he pushed that diplomat out of the way and he like,
yes, oh yeah, of course, because Trump, But then look at Justin Trudeau. He tries to shake the hand of I think it was the Macron.
It was the Russian.
Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro. It was Bolsonaro.
Yep.
He went to shake Bolsonaro's hand and he just goes.
Yep.
And Trudeau's looking out like, what do I do? What do I do?
That I like about him. I love that.
That was Putin. Putin wouldn't shake his hand either. What? Oh, did I imagine that?
I didn't see that part.
I like how he pulled people in and put his hand up like he gave him the power handshake.
Yes, exactly. And that especially when you look at what he did with North Korea, okay? And he put himself in such a precarious spot for the sake of, imagery and like the optics of it. Okay. The photo op. But look at what kind of strength he posed where he went into the DMZ and shook hands with probably one of the worst dictators that this nation's or that the world has seen since you name a previous dictator that that's been dead for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right? Mm-hmm. And that was a bold move to where, hey, that extension handshake would tell a North Korean individual, especially a leader, maybe these Americans aren't that bad. Everything that we've been taught from when Kim Jong-un was a little kid, Americans are this, that, and the other, right? Well, how would they never know anything different? Because no American leaders would ever go to visit the guy.
Hey,
right?
One thing he did that I appreciated was he showed a sign of strength to those people that's all they understand. Like,
yes,
a lot of these cultures that all they understand is male dominance. He played that role perfect. He was perfect for that.
Dominance and strength in general, and because especially with Asian cultures, okay, when you're I spent 15 years selling, as my profession, and when you're dealing with that culture, specifically the Asian culture, if you come across as mealy mouth and very friendly and super friendly, they're gonna perceive you as weak. Okay, and they'll take, and that's just part of the culture. It's not a racial thing; it's a cultural thing. Okay, and so to convey that strength, you have to meet them at their playing field. If you want to negotiate with insert culture here, you have to communicate with them in the manner that they're accustomed to in dealing with each other. That's how you become a diplomatic type person that can accomplish things and bring people together. You have to be able to communicate to them in ways that they understand, because that's how their culture evolved in their area. Whoever they are, doesn't matter who they are, because Germans are going to negotiate in different manners. Chinese are going to negotiate in different manners. Koreans are going to, all different, right? But at the core of it, human nature is you want to, if you're going to conduct business with somebody, you want to conduct business with somebody that you have confidence in, that the person that you're buying something from is going to deliver.
Right.
And that was Trump's strong suit, was that he could deliver. But when he had all these kind of like, are you familiar with the term crabs in a bucket?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So here's Trump trying to, like, get out of his bucket. He did all the media, pulling him down. Okay. And that, had that element not been there and just be like, okay, well, President Trump did X, Y, and Z today, but the media was in lockstep with the DNC, with the deep state, if you want to call it that, okay, to make sure that he could not remove them from their power, okay, because the establishment, the one thing that they don't want to lose is their obtained power throughout the last 100 years or so, however long, that carefully crafted social engineering bit of well, we've done 100 years to get to where we're at now, and here comes this blowhard fight promoter that he builds buildings, and he's orange, and he does all these crazy he puts his name on everything. Okay, I mean, I suspect Trump has Trump on his forks in his house, you know what I mean, because in case he forgets who he is. But my point being is that here's this complete outsider. Okay, the first time he runs for president, he wins. And Mitt Romney, and I'll pick on him for a minute because I lived in Utah for 23 years. Mitt Romney was like, how could they elect this idiot? And me, I'm Mittens Romney. I'm a respectable, great businessman. Well, you're kind of a phony, but that's the topic for another day. And to this day, he's still jealous of the fact that that Trump won his first time out, and Romney, being this established politician, from the son of a governor, okay, going, and how could he lose the presidency to, or his bid, and Trump wins when in Romney's view, Trump's this giant, D-bag.
Yeah. It's interesting, man. But we see, so much, especially these days, that ever since Trump, it's like, and Biden got in office, it's like the the big corporations like, say, Facebook and Google and all these people, they've just now been empowered to just, capitalize and maximize on political correctness, language control.
Yeah.
And
they're like propaganda machines.
Just for irrelevant stuff, like just for having an opinion. Like, I will come out and literally say, I do not hate trans people because I have a friend who's a trans person and I wanted to put them on this show. But because I'm critical about free speech stuff and just question things, I've been banned.
The thing I want to make clear, like I was telling the Forrest guy, he's probably gone by now, right?
No, he's still here.
Are you still here? People need to understand there's a difference between supporting individuals and supporting movements. I don't support movements because movements push ideologies and say they represent me, but they really don't represent me. So
because a movement is going to have kind of a myopic point, but individuals are far more complex than that.
Yeah, I don't know what myopic means. Sorry.
Singular, like a singular vision,
like a focus.
You know what I mean?
And then
unable to see outside their own bubble. But individuals are far more complex than that.
But see,
individuals are far more complex.
And they push these ideologies that they claim, it's good for everybody, and that's just not reality. I don't see things black and white like that. What's good for one person may not be good for another person. So
exactly, because you are an individual and you're an individual and I'm an individual.
Right. So
we may have similar viewpoints on things, which is what we converse about, right? But we're gonna have different takes. I like, chocolate ice cream. You might like vanilla.
Right.
And Forrest Taylor wants to say, he says, I never claimed that you were anti any individual trans people or trans people generally.
Well, that's kind of what I got out of it when you called us out about our show on a post that was not even related to that, and said that basically Scott's a hypocrite because he's doing the same thing on our show. And then you were like, So that's kind of how you came across. So I guess you got to take responsibility for how you came across or whatever because of what you said. But we did talk about it on and on and on, and you said you did apologize or whatever. But I'm just saying, you're not the first. You're not the first one.
Person, and
You're
I'll
not the
say
first.
that, I'll say that sometimes we have people on the show. Sorry, just so I can get it out, so I don't keep interrupting.
Go ahead.
But sometimes we'll have people on the show that'll turn around, like Ajunte, for example, and he was like, I always thought Scott was this, that, and the other, but now that I talk to him in person, he's not really like that at all. And I know 100% that I've never said anything in my text that was anything outside of what I say in person. But the perception, there's a lot of baggage with labels and, things like that, and echo chambers that they think you're a part of. They assume so much. Until they really talk to you in person, they really don't understand you. So sometimes communication gets lost in text. That's why I don't like debates in text and
yeah, but a lot of it is also because of the very topic that we're talking about right now, social engineering. People are so, I'm not saying he is in particular, but man, let's face it, a lot of people are just brainwashed and going with whatever is the mainstream right now. And then they have all these talking points. And as soon as they hear one specific word, you must be a terrorist. When you hear the word conservatism, you must be a supremacist. It's just ridiculous because if you actually study what conservatism is, it's a spectrum. It's not just people that are on the far right and things like that, and who said that as a trans person, I have to be on the left and shit like that. And we can't take Blair White serious because she's a conservative. All these, what is it? Buzzwords? I don't know.
Buzzwords. Here's the thing. And this is kind of where, I think a lot of this rests on. Is Americans and people in general, they're busy in their daily lives. They're working, they're raising a family, they're going to school, they're doing all these things. And there's only so many hours in a day. Okay. And so most people don't have the available time to really take in, kind of like drinking from a fire hose or from a fire hydrant, all the available information to kind of understand contextual history and so on. And I kind of come in at a unique standpoint to where I started watching, political stuff when I was a little kid. I remember the 1980 election when I was 3. Okay. Wow. My parents had, the DNC, Jimmy Carter, the Democratic National Convention and the Reagan Convention. And we got this new TV we just got cable. Okay. And they had that TV cranked as loud as possible. And I remember going like this, this is loud, And so, but I remember as a little kid hearing, the news and stuff. And I remember walking around the house before the election saying, Jimmy Carter, Jimmy Carter, Jimmy Carter. And my mom was like, why are you saying that? Right? Because I heard it on TV. You know what I mean? And for whatever reason, as a 3.5-year-old, I was like, Jimmy Carter, yay. Right. And, but I, growing up, I was always inundated with political because my mother growing up in pre and during the revolution and after the revolution, post revolution, she was a little kid. I could tell you some horror stories that my mother had experienced growing up. My grandfather, he had 2 businesses. He had a chicken farm with 20,000 chickens, and he was a master carpenter. Okay. And when the revolution came through, the soldiers came in, kicked down the door and said, we're now claiming your business in the name of the revolution. And now that was taken over, And so my grandparents sent my mom when she was 15 years old in 1962, okay, to come across by herself with like $10 or $15 in her pocket to Miami, okay? And here you go, good luck, And she was put in Central Campesino down in Homestead or Florida City, and then she went to Illinois to live with an uncle until she was 18. So here, imagine being 15 years old. Now, oddly enough, in Cuba, contrary to popular, historical fact, is that Castro made all the Cubans literate. Literacy was at like 99.2% before Castro. He brought it up to like 99.4. Good job.
Great.
You did great. By okay, you read the Communist Manifesto or you get shot. Okay, I read good.
Well, look, guys,
so
I'm gonna have to dip off here in a second.
Okay.
Yeah, like I don't mean to be rude or anything, but
No, you're good.
It's going on 10 o'clock.
2 hours.
Do we want to finish that video real quick, or do we want to just call
No,
it a night?
let's go ahead and hold that off because that'll be too long.
We'll do part 2.
Yeah, we'll do
part 2 next week, and then we'll go from there.
We really need to do a part 2 because this is a big topic.
Hell yeah, man, and an interesting topic. And I think it was a great show, guys. Like,
Likewise.
really good, fun
And
conversation.
No, and I appreciate
Got
the
good
chat.
lighting going on.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate the people that participated in the chat.
And Scott trying to distract me with his little shirt and his little stuff going on over there.
But Forrest Taylor, brought up some really good points. So I'll give him a shout out for sure. And once this podcast or this broadcast gets some traction and stuff, I think we can really make it into something very interesting. So I will sign out.
I don't kill the show.
Well, thanks for coming, Mike. Thanks for coming. Appreciate all your input.
Likewise.
All right, we're gonna say good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
See everybody next time.
Thank you.
We're gonna
have a good one.
The next cliffhanger. There we go.
You bet.
Bye-bye.